Year 8, welcome to the next lesson on our theme about how the body works. Today we'll be looking at medicines and antibiotics. So as always, follow our helpful tips for working at home. Make sure that it is quiet, you have a pen and paper, and pause the video when you are asked to. So we'll start with a bit of revision. So when I click on these, can you tell me the type of pathogen, the spread, the symptoms, and the control as we go through? So it takes about 20 seconds. Let's see if you can beat the fades they go through. So here we go. Okay, so we've got our spread, our symptoms, and our control. Make sure you are happy with all of those, okay, before moving on. We do need to remember that measles, HIV, salmonella, tuberculosis, malaria, the type of pathogen, whether they're a virus, a bacteria, or a protist, and how they are spread, and the symptoms and the control. Now, if you look, quite a few of these are vaccination, 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 antibiotics, antiviral drugs. Okay, so some of these you can control, but malaria, the control is mosquito, that's killing mosquitoes. So, today's driving question: what are medicines and what is antibiotic resistance? So what are medicines? How long have we had them? What do they actually do? So I thought it might be nice to go back and look at the history of medicines from the start. So we are going to go right the way back and start. First one, way back 2000 BC. The Egyptians had the ability to record medical knowledge on paper, papyrus. So they could pass down from one to the other what had happened, what they saw when someone became ill. 300 BC, Alexander the Great conquers huge parts of the area. The Greek ideas and theories about medicine were passed around. Alexander became a hub of learning with developing medical theories. The Greek doctors dissected bodies, both alive and dead, to make discoveries about anatomy and how the body works. So, fourth century invasions. The Goths, the Vandals, the Vikings, the Saxons invade Britain and divide it. Again, they bring their ideas about public health. Monasteries retain learning, the ability to write and record information. So this is some of the issues. So a lot of this was lost. Some of the good ideas were actually lost in these invasions because they were destroyed. So the public health and universities were replaced with the Dark Ages. So they weren't there anymore. So after moving on from the 4th century, with the Renaissance. So between 13 and 1500, it's the rebirth of Europe, as it were. Artists such as Da Vinci, Michelangelo, study and paint the human body in detail, look at more anatomy, and then Versailles' book on the fabric of the human body in 7 books replaces Galen's ideas. So Galen was before, and they start now to really look again at the human body. So moving on from there, so the Black Death, 1347 to 48, bubonic plague has a 50 to 75% death rate. They had no understanding of the disease and blamed it on different things. Now, Napoleon, the vaccination of French troops in 1805 ensured them against smallpox. So they stayed strong and healthy as possible. So looking at our very first early vaccinations in 1800. So 1858, General Medical Councils. Doctors' qualification must now be regulated by an official body. So as we go through, as you can see, now we're getting the build-up of medicine, doctors, nurses, hospitals, the anatomy of the body. So, Public Health Act, 1848, okay? It was not compulsory, but it gave local authorities money and desire to improve health and hospitals and build them. So we start to get the building of our early NHS. So 1901, blood groups discovered. So we didn't know about A positive, O positive, O negative. So this was a massive leap forward. We knew there were different types of blood. So National Health Insurance, 1911. Some financial help if workers became ill. They had to pay into the National Insurance Scheme. This was the beginning of the real welfare state, and it was a safety net in hard times. So you used to have to pay for hospital treatment way back at the start of the 1900s. So 1946, massive, the start of the National Health Service, free and comprehensive healthcare from cradle to grave. This was the big start of our real introduction in the UK to medicines and where we are today. By the 1950s, it was already running at £350 million. You know, we know how vital our NHS has been at the moment. So another important part, 1953, Francis Crick and James Watson and Rosalind Franklin discovered DNA. Start to take pictures of it and look at how DNA works with the body and how we can start to look at medicines in a more DNA and genome way. 1994, National Organ Donor Register. So, and bring us right update, the Nightingale Hospital in London has done so much to help COVID sufferers. Obviously, there's a lot of these sprung up, and luckily, a lot of them have been taken down now. So that's just a bit of a brief history on where we've come through for medicine. Obviously, I can't pick on all the bits, but give you an idea from going all the way through human history. We've wanted to have and needed desire to look at medicine and find out what a medicine or what medicines are and how they work. So we know that, and when I talk about medicines, we refer to drugs. So what actually are drugs? So a drug is a chemical substance that affects the central nervous system. So anything can be a drug. Drugs are categorized according to whether they are illegal or illegal and the type they have on the CNS. So when I said anything can be a drug, so for example, coffee contains caffeine, that's a drug. Chocolate contains different chemicals that are classed as drugs. Fizzy drinks, for special, the sports aid drinks. Some of the things they have in them are classed as drugs. So many things that you wouldn't think of are classed as drugs. So they fall in different categories. We've got stimulants, caffeine, cocaine, depressants, alcohol, solvents, painkillers, example aspirin, heroin, and then we've got hallucinogens. So there are four main, and then we have performance enhancers, so anabolic steroids. So our main ones are stimulant, depressant, painkillers, hallucinogens, and then we have our performance enhancers. So we can look at a few. So example, stimulants. What do stimulants do? They speed up the activity of the nervous system by increasing the release of neurotransmitters. So they make the brain work quicker. They increase alertness, improve memory, but they raise the heart rate and blood pressure, and they reduce appetite. So as we know, coffee is one of our stimulants. Okay, there we go. Caffeine and cocaine are another type. So after stimulants, we've got depressants. What do they do? Depressants slow down the activity of the nervous system by reducing the release of neurotransmitters at certain synapses. So they make the brain work slower. But it can result in sleeplessness. It can help reduce anxiety, but high dose can lead to addiction. Common depressants include alcohol, solvents, and barbiturates. So a lot of people think drinking makes you happy. It doesn't. It's actually classed as a depressant. So why take drugs? Why do people take drugs? So medicinal drugs, painkillers, antibiotics are used to treat diseases or disorders. So remember we looked at our well-being. If you have a disease, you can't be classed as being healthy or have a good well-being, because they are linked together, our mental, our physical and our social well-being. So we can use painkillers or antibiotics to treat different diseases. Then there are also recreational drugs. Alcohol, smoking are used for leisure purposes, but because they cause change in mood behaviour or perception. So, very, very briefly there, why do we take drugs? Medicinal, recreational. Okay, so I want to touch on quite a bit today about really antibiotics, and especially antibiotic resistance. So, quick question recap, please. I'd like to read the questions, then work on an answer. So, pause the video now, and then we'll look at the answers. Okay, so answers are going to be, okay, all right. I'm not going to read these out for you guys. I want to just go through and you should be able to make sure you have those. So I'll pause the video now and make sure that you have the correct answers. Okay, so we're going to go back and look at the birth of antibiotics, as it were. So, 1928, a very, very important man called Alexander Fleming noticed something on an agar plate that was covered in bacteria. So that's our gentleman there. And after this had been purified, he discovered that the mold, what they purified, the mold had penicillin in it, and that became the first antibiotic. We still use it today, a very, very wide-ranging antibiotic drug. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like to watch this video. I'll put the link in the description of the video below. Watch the video and this will tell you how antibiotics work. So pause that, go to the link and watch the video now, please. Okay, good. I hope you enjoyed it. It's quite a nice one. So you should now know how antibiotics work. So I'd like you now to fill in the blanks on the screen, or write these sentences down and fill in the blanks for the keywords on there for you. So pause the video and do that now for me, please. Okay, so answers. Antibiotics are substances which either kill or inhibit cell processes of bacteria. This stops them growing and reproducing. Antibiotics do not have this effect on human cells, making them very useful for attacking bacterial infections that the immune system cannot control. So that in a nutshell is what antibiotics do. But what is antibiotic resistance? What happens if you are given a course of antibiotics and you do not finish the course off? This is becoming a really, really big problem at the moment. So let me show you how this works. So all right, so we've got here bacteria in a population show variation in the amount of resistance to an antibiotic. So I've got two different types of bacteria here. I've got my red and I've got my yellow. So a course of antibiotics started, and with time it kills more and more bacteria, but the most resistant take longer to die. Here we go. So I'm left with a few of that bacteria. Okay, so that, a lot of them being killed, but I'm left with a small amount. Now, if the course of antibiotics is stopped too soon, the resistant bacteria survive and reproduce, and now we have a new host of bacteria that are resistant to that type of antibiotics. I'll go through that again with you. So here we have our bacteria. Okay. Some show variation in the amount of resistance to antibiotics, how resistant they are to that type of antibiotic you're given by a doctor. So some die, but I'm still left with a few that take longer to die from that antibiotic. You stop that course of antibiotics too early, and then that bacteria, only a very small amount, can reproduce, and now they are immune or have a high resistance to that type of antibiotic that you have used. So the one doctor I give you is not going to work on that same infection. So again, link to the second video, guys, in the bottom of the description. Can you pause the video now and go and watch the second video for me? Okay, good. So it's been quite, again, a quick lesson today, but I hope you've got an idea what medicines are, the history of medicines, a brief overview, obviously, who invented antibiotics, why we need antibiotics, and what is antibiotic resistance. We need to keep producing new medicines. If we don't keep on researching these, eventually we're going to run out of antibiotics. And we'll get to the stage where none of the antibiotics are going to be working. As you know, now we're working really hard to try and find a cure or a vaccine for the COVID-19. That's going to take a long time. They reckon up to 18 months. But it does highlight why it's so important that we produce new medicines. So what I would like you to do for your research around this lesson, let's go and find and research about what they're trying to do for the COVID-19 vaccinations. Can you find out what stage they're at, how they're going to go about making a vaccine for it, where are the trials? I'd like to write this up or take photos of it, or tell me that, and I'd like to upload it, please, into your class area for me. Okay, so until next time, guys, thanks very much. Take care. Bye-bye.